You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Folks, welcome back to the Shoe In Show. Thank you so much for joining us again on our latest and greatest episode. We cover the ins and outs of the footwear business side. We're super interested in operations, innovations, supply chains, retail trends, all related around footwear in particular. Cover all types. So this episode is going to be really fun because I think footwear is a global product, right? So all over the world. But so many people touch it and interact with it across our supply chains. And what makes, I think the footwear industry so unique are the innovators, constantly thinking about new types of product, new ways of doing it. And so, Matt, I think we've got one of our industry innovators on today that I think people in the industry know who they are, maybe not outside, but the chances are if you're out running in a hot new shoe right now in the marketplace, you're probably running in a product this guy created. So super excited about this today.
Yeah, man. And I'm very excited to have Jean-Luc Diard, who's the Vice President of Innovation at Deckers Group. He also manages, and in that role, manages the Deckers XLab. Jean-Luc, it is so exciting to have you here with us today because we love innovation. We love innovators within the footwear industry. And you check all those boxes. So thank you for coming on Shoe In Show. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. So my first question, and I suspect sometimes we ask this, sometimes we don't, but I really want to ask this of you. What is your shoe story? Because yours is unique, and I know a little bit about it, but I would love for our listeners to dive deeper into, before we get to the Deckers X Lab, tell us how you got into the industry.
So I was doing, let's say, a multitude of sports and a multitude of outdoor sports. And the good thing into the outdoor terrain is that it changes all the time, just by nature. You up, down, traverses, rocky, flat, easy, etc. The weather changes all the time, so it's a very challenging terrain. So that's one thing. On the other side, I enjoyed also. As a young person, I did track and field, and I did all those things. And there was always kind of a gap between what running shoes, let's say, could bring in a multitude of situations, and that's pretty much what led me to aim at pushing the things in this area. First, when I was the CEO at the Salomon Group, where through adventure racing, we started to push the boundaries one step further. And then by creating HOKA, in aiming at pushing it even one step further.
Yeah, and HOKA is one of many brands Deckers has that's on fire. HOKA is setting trends. I've seen other running brands now start to emulate many of the innovations that you've fathered, for lack of a better term. So as you take your history as an innovator and your history with Salomon and HOKA in particular, talk to us about what your current initiatives are and what your role is at Deckers and how important the Deckers X Lab is to continue that legacy of innovation at Deckers.
Yeah. So Deckers is a really interesting group in the sense that we have into the group brands in a multitude of categories. So UGG on the, let's say, the big casual side. You have Teva and Sanuk that are more on the sandal side, and you have HOKA, obviously, which is on the running shoe side. So through those shoes, and this is just a simplified version of it, but through those brands, we cover really a super wide spectrum of shoes. And when you look at all those categories, one thing that is fair to say is that the running world lately has obviously been innovating at a much faster pace than many of the other areas. As the thing started to move in the running world, the amazing thing is that it is the fashion world who took mostly notice of it, and that embraced notably the oversized, let's say, technology very quickly,
Right.
at some point faster than some other categories. But it's not just about one technology in one thing. It's about the benefits that technologies provide, and what we are aiming at is to provide, let's say, across the widest range of shoe categories, uh, best practices, best ideas, best technologies that don't mandatorily transition into each and every segment, just because the brands are very often focused on one category and they don't have the opportunity to either be curious enough about other
Hmm.
categories or just not being working on other categories. So our first job is to bring, let's say, to transfer best ideas from different categories across all the categories. It's not about making one gigantic category, but it's transferring benefits, let's say, when they make sense in other categories. And through that, you could differentiate, let's say, two big blocks in some ways. Everything that is under the foot, which is an inherent part of the dynamic comfort, where fundamentally running learnings, I don't say mandatorily immediately the exact running technology, but where running learnings can apply as soon as you are in motion. And that's one thing where you see naturally elements of rocker, elements of cushioning, elements of how you just groove the shoes and how the type of profiles you make. So all those things can migrate into a very wide range of categories. You can also push the boundaries one step further by with the intention to give always more to people. So it's not because, let's say, something is designed as a slipper, to take this example, that you may not have to go into the street with it just to pick up whatever, I mean, your milk
Right.
and that you may have to run because there's a car coming, or etc. So we aim at giving more than what you need, through first all the dynamic comfort that you can have underfoot. And then on the upper part of the shoe, let's say, there are obviously all the classical fit, comfort aspects, but there is one thing that we pay a little bit more attention to right now. It's thermoregulation, because you're as soon as you are in action and you go outside, inside, etc., you are facing a multitude of temperature variations, and we want your foot to feel as good as possible in all those situations. So it just to give you an idea of the things that we tend to focus a little bit on. Then we want to make all this, I mean, as user friendly as possible. We want to make it obviously as sustainable as possible across the whole spectrum. Um, those are the things that we try to do.
I think it's interesting that you bucket it that way when you're thinking about that to focus your efforts. What's the interplay when you think about innovation in terms of doing moonshots, like trying to make something no one's ever made before versus trying to tackle little challenges that happen with footwear across all the categories? How do you stretch yourself in those ways?
So
What do you think about that?
So it really is both, but there is a dynamic into it. So
Yeah.
the first thing is that you always have to shoot much further than what people would need or would expect,
Mm,
but focusing only on one benefit at a time, one
mm,
thing that you want to explore one step further. So you go to the extreme of it. As you go to the extreme of it, you know that some of the other parameters will be compromised, maybe, but at least you try to know whether in by going into that direction, in searching on that benefit, is there an avenue that is interesting? Is there something that is really making a difference, or while you have gone very far, poof, at the end the benefit is not that big. So you go very far. Uh, as you if you once that you have gone very far and that you have seen that there is a benefit potentially there, you have also identified the roadblocks to go there. Which are the other things that you have compromised? So then you start to eliminate a little bit those roadblocks to see what you can do to get them. And then you prepare something which is kind of the extreme version, maybe something that people will not always dare to go up to. But then you also, not just mentally, but also into the range, you start to think about which are the steps that you have to do in between. Because when you go far away, I mean, not everyone will agree with that, and you may target just a narrower, let's say, user group. But at least you have done something that showed the potential, and then you work a little bit backwards to put the things that are in between, where you start to do those incremental steps, but you know the direction. So
Right.
so that's why you combine the two, because if you go only step by step, you never know how far you can go. So you need really to jump clearly ahead, at least on one or the other, and one parameter at a time. Then you start to combine them, but you jump very far and then you build back.
Yeah, I love this. I feel like I'm learning a lot just listening to this conversation. Like in my own mind, I'm like, all right, how can I restructure my workflows to work like that as well, to keep innovating myself? I guess the question from that though is, what did the HOKA look like before it got pared down to what it is now? What did you come up with?
But the actually, I mean, so it looked ugly. When you start something like this and you have your friends and your spouse and your kids, I mean, that are looking at you and say, "Are you sure?" But you have to go through those steps and fundamentally never stop on, let's say, the initial visual impact. The starting point of anything is the function that you are creating, and just to take a parallel with one of the most successful brand, let's say, into the Deckers group today, which is UGG. When it was born as an après surf shoe, and nobody could say that it was really a queen of beauty as a shoe initially. But the features, the feeling that you got, made it what it became, and it turned out from being an après surf shoe to being and for men essentially at the beginning, which turned out to be a fashion woman item for the winter time, just because the functional base was initially something really special. So you focus on that, you forget a little bit about the style at the beginning, and once you have the key features that you know that there is something happening there, then you start really to go into styling, because you obviously have to make it let's say, appealing enough. We knew that at the beginning, and we heard everything at the beginning of HOKA, you can imagine. But you just don't be afraid, let's say, of people's reaction, provided that you have a functional base.
So, Jean-Luc, let me ask you this: as we were talking about the moonshot and the innovation and all that goes into the Deckers XLab, how do you put time frames on these things? How do you decide, okay, we're going to give this 18 months or 2 years or 6 months or 5 years? It's really hard for me to conceptualize when do you show your cards and when do you fold, and walk us through how you kind of make those judgments for each of the initiatives that you're working on.
So we always put ourselves in a mode of going fast. Always. We don't say, "Oh, this is going to be a 2.5 year development" or something like that. We aim at being able to bring the things to market in 6 months, just as a principle. And what it forces you to do when you do this is as soon as you have done your first proto, you focus on the essential. And then we turn very quickly several iterations around it. You modify the geometry, you modify the material characteristics, you modify a few things, but you very quickly, after you have pushed something extreme, you do those quick iterations. You test in a very short way with very few people, and here it's essentially the rule where one comment is the hazard, two is a coincidence, three is a rule. So you just aim at you don't need to go to know whether 29.71% of the people are feeling good with this. You just have to have very critical people to test with very solid reference products. Some that you have, but also a lot of products that are your competitors' products or products in other areas in some cases. And as soon as you have this, then you get, let's say, your concept. And from your concept, then you start to now, say, how do I see it? Do I see it at more or less at that price point, into that category, for that user, etc.? And you take what seems to be the most successful road, you go for it, you develop it. And this is where Decker's XLab as a principle is really interesting, because we have then the opportunity, which is different from your classical brand management, brand inline management. We have the opportunity to bring products to market as soon as we think they are ready. So we are not constrained by the classical sales meeting approach, the classical collection approach, etc. We just take the risk of say, hey, we're going to do 1,000 pair of that because we feel there is something really interesting. So we are not going to launch something that is not ready, let's say, that is not working. But through that, we will test appetite of users. We will test all the elements of manufacturing, production, development, and you have then something where you have learned more by forcing you to go to market at a faster pace. Otherwise, you are very much at risk of searching, and not finding.
Forever.
And there's a cost to it. I mean, there's a cost to innovation. So you need to be sensitive to that. And everything that stays for too long in the labs or so on is not worth it. So that doesn't say that everything is going to come out in 6 months. Not by any mean. I mean, some of the products will take 2 years. We hardly go beyond 2 years. Most of the time, in 1 year, we have all the things done. Because when you skip, I said, all the sales meeting and so on, you gain 6 months at least into coming to market.
I think that's interesting. I want to talk a little bit about your structure there at the XLab then, because I think, as you point out, it's different. But I mean, you're talking, as we're discussing today, I'm just thinking about how much culture's been built into that, your innovation culture, right? You're explaining concisely and perfectly how you want innovation to function, right? Mm-hmm. Not at a pie in the sky level, but actually like executing it and launching it and seeing and testing and bringing it back and learning. So obviously the culture at the lab is set and people know what to expect. How many people do you have working in the lab? How does the leadership at the company view this? Because as you say, you're launching product, which is really interesting. In some ways, it would frighten a lot of other C-suites to see, just launching product out to see what's happening and seeing. So tell us a little bit about the structure of the lab and the interplay with the C-suite, and that. Have you ever had your hand slapped by anybody by going too far?
So we are about 15 people.
Okay.
And the unique thing is that we are split more or less evenly between US, Europe, and China. So that's a big part of the thing, is that through that we work kind of 24/7, if you want. The other big advantage of this is that we are having highs with completely different cultures on the same topic. So we have so it's not where you have one place that thinks and the other place executes. Every place has a role into the thinking. So that's important. The other thing that we aim at in terms of the profile of people is we look for profile of people that are multi-sport usually. Meaning that they, if not usually, it's part of the selection, let's say, so that they are confronted in using equipment and stuff in other environment than only one environment. So it's very important to have let's say a broad looking at things. Then when it comes to your question of the C-suite and the management, what we saw at the beginning was that it was taking a long period of time in the transfer of innovation ideas or suggestions into inline. Not that the people did not like it or did not believe it, even if you have always the not invented by me syndrome from time to time,
Right.
just because you have a planning. I mean, you have something that is a range management and so on. But competition, let's say globally speaking, doesn't care about that. I mean, that's your own problem. It's not the problem of the users. It's not the problem of the world around you. And with information, I mean, going at full speed, you just can't wait. I mean, I have enough experience to see that the same ideas come at the same time in a multitude of places. When we launched the suspension shoe, I mean, last fall, the same month, within 15 days, you had a similar concept starting in Europe with Puma, and you had a similar concept starting in China with Li-Ning. So we were on 3 different continents, 3 different factories, 3 completely different. Ideas came at the same time. And if you don't do it, other people will do it. They will take the lead, they will learn. And by the time you try to catch up, they are already ahead. So we decided with the C-suite to say, hey, let's do something different. Let's create a label where we go DTC, so that we remove, let's say, the classical hurdles of the sales meetings and so on, and let's learn from that. And I think they gave the trust on me and my team, just because we had a little bit of experience already on the matter, and they say, well, that's worth trying it this way.
Yeah, I mean, you've built up a career of showing that you can innovate, Jean-Luc. So I can imagine that you're the exact perfect person to put at the helm of the XLab. Before we bring in Jasmine Pendergrass for our closeouts segment, I want to set the record straight. I do this often because we're in the shoe industry. We hear people referencing brands and mispronouncing brands. And so can you walk us through HOKA One One? I hear all my friends say 1-1, and I always sit there, I feel like a jerk, but I'm correcting people left and right. So walk us through that.
Yeah, so you're perfectly right. It's HOKA One One, and the reason is that HOKA in Maori language means flying, soaring, and One One means earth. So HOKA One One means flying or soaring over the earth.
There you have, man. I love this podcast. You won't get that anywhere else. I appreciate you setting the record straight, Jean-Luc. With that, I want to bring in Jasmine Pendergrass, and Jasmine is going to do her world famous "What You Got, What You Getting" segment. So, Jean-Luc, she'll explain to you the rules, and then we'll make our way around the room in this fun little game we like to play. So, Jasmine, it's all you.
Yeah. Okay, so it's pretty easy. All you have to do is say what shoes you have on currently and some footwear that you're interested in getting in the future. So I will start, so you'll have an example. I have nothing on my feet currently, but I'm hoping,
get some shoes on.
But I'm hoping to get out the house later. And I plan on probably putting on a pair of sandals. I think I need to refurbish my sandals collection. So adding in some really fashionable ones and some outdoor ones. So that's what I'm getting next. What about you, Jean-Luc? What do you have on your feet now? What are you planning on getting?
Right now I have on my feet, because I'm constantly testing, I have a Sanuk prototype that will come in June very soon. So, but what you will see typically as part of the continuation of the innovation that we said, it's a transfer of technologies that we are bringing into the Sanuk range. And you know that Sanuk is known for something that is very laid back, very easy to wear. But those were built with not with big technologies, let's say. So we are bringing new concept, a totally new concept that gives those shoes not only a wonderful cushion, but a very nice rebound. The idea is to make you bounce if you want, but bounce not by running, bounce by just walking casually, to make it just fun when you are going out. So we engineered a new concept, and that's the type of benefit, as I explained before, that we want to provide beyond running. I mean, really, we can make walking really a nice feeling, and that's what we are trying to give. I mean, this a wonderful cushion and bounce.
This is speaking my language, the walking part. So that's more my speed is the walking. So you can launch the Sanuk big guy, and I will buy those up for my feet. Just let me know for the bounce.
Well, I will. So I'll play. I don't have this the Sanuk big guy yet, but I have been wearing a ton of the HOKA Aura recovery flip flops. And to your point, Jean-Luc, they have great cushioning. I wear those all over the place. And now that we're setting it into the summer months, I'm excited to be wearing those. And what I'm going to get is, now that I know about Teva Forever and the sustainability aspect of what Deckers is doing with Teva, I've got to pick up some Tevas that at some future date down the road, then I will ship back to you so you can recycle for a variety of different products. So that's
exactly. No, but it's a wonderful. I mean, we are putting a big effort with the group, not just in the classical, let's say, sustainability materials and processes as everyone is doing. We tend to not talk too much about what we do, but rather do than talk too much about it, because anytime you do a product, anyway, you kind of pollute somewhere. I mean, as soon as you manufacture something. So the big effort that we do, and that is that you see through the Teva action there, is really on the end of life. We want to make sure that we work on technologies that not only, let's say, are great when you on the upfront of manufacturing, but to work big time on the end of life, through everything it will take. I mean, to solve the problem of the end of life of products, or contribute to solve it. This is really a big focus of us as a group on this, and you will hear more from various brands on that.
Great.
That's awesome. Yeah, we appreciate, just to let everybody know, Deckers Brands is one of our program sponsors for sustainability. So Deckers Brands is not only creating and innovating in their own space, but they're actually contributing to FDRA to help others do the same thing. So through collaboration together, we can get a lot more sustainable. I'll say on my end, I don't buy many products. As any listener who knows, I don't buy a lot of stuff in general. My wife wears HOKAs, loves them. I shouldn't be surprised at this point, but even when I was watching my daughter play soccer last Saturday, some of the parents walked up and like 3 or 4 had HOKAs on.
They're everywhere.
Like,
They're absolutely everywhere.
Like, it's just like, so you start seeing it more and more. So that's exciting to see. And what I'm still waiting on Chris Hillier there to send me some Sanuks to test. He said he would. They might not been delivered yet, so I'm still waiting on what you get, Jasmine. We'll see.
You'll see. It's really interesting. I mean, you will be. I think you will be amazed. I mean, it's all right. It's all right.
Awesome. Jean-Luc, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing insights. And I think a lot of people will hear this episode, and we hope, and this is what the whole podcast is all about, we hope it sparks something in your mind. Hopefully it changes your process or helps you innovate or think through innovation steps and processes. The whole goal of this podcast is to strengthen the industry. That's really what we're here for, to share best practices, to hear leaders talk about it, and not just hear the process, Jean-Luc, but the culture that you're trying to build around that is really fascinating, and it shows in the product. So kudos to you and your team there. Keep it up. We're super excited to see what else you guys are going to be coming out with. And as always, folks, shoeandshow.com is where our website is. We have our whole catalog of almost 300 episodes now from leaders across the industry. You can go back and check it out. Most episodes, even from a couple years ago, still super relevant in terms of operations and efficiencies and ideas. I think more so now since last March, since we've gone through COVID, we've kind of seen this big shift happening. So if you start back in March and go through, it'll be really interesting to see what we were talking about at the start of COVID. But now it's really interesting to see the conversation shift and flow towards this really hopeful, really thoughtful way of excitement now that we're coming out, and people hopefully have trimmed the fat and optimized and are thinking about things a lot differently as we reemerge as societies, which we're hopeful of. But as always, you can find us on any podcast. We thank you so much for listening. If you have ideas for shows, topics, guests, etc., drop us a line. Just let us know. We're here to serve the industry any way that we can. And as always, thanks to Matt and Jasmine, our team on our podcast that makes this podcast so successful, and to you, the listeners, for continuing to listen and support us. Until next time, please keep listening, please keep buying shoes, and Shoein' is out.
Shoein' has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.